Council, come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mandy, could you please call the roll?
You will now be placed into the conference.
Rainforest.
Here.
Anstra.
Here.
Carlstone.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
Spore. Here.
All right, can I get a motion for approval of the tentative agenda?
So support.
Bamstra, Branderhorst, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Anstra.
Yes.
Rainforest.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore. Yes. Dion.
Yes.
Motion passed. So our ambulance crew is here tonight to introduce us to their newest member of their crew, or maybe there's two of them going to be introduced tonight. So I will turn the floor over to you guys. And,
You want to use the mic up there?
oh, yeah, that's okay.
So what we have here is, this is Nitro. This was the dog that was the big rock star that we've got approved for through Midland Crisis, Canine Crisis of the Midlands. And he is 11 weeks old. It's Nitro. He's probably doubled in size once we've had him. The only training we've been trying to do with him so far is potty training. So he actually goes to school beginner in May 25th will be his beginning of his first obedience training. He's got about 18 months of training before he's actually a therapy dog. This is Walter. Walter is my personal dog, and to prepare my staff, he's been coming in the afternoons for probably since January.
Yeah.
Been coming in the afternoons, and Midland Crisis had me enroll him in obedience school. He actually was the star of the obedience class, and they asked him to be part of the organization, and I said, okay. So he only comes in the afternoons, and he's Nitro's play buddy, but we've already been to Pella Christian's 4th grade class, the mock trial that was here. There was 3 classes. We've been to the lockdown at Madison. We've been to the lockdown at Lincoln, and we went to the criminal justice class at the high school. So they've been around, and they're getting more and more adjusted to people all the time. So it's been good. There's been a huge change in the atmosphere at the ambulance. So they seem to bring joy wherever they go.
I know the 4th graders had a good time when they were here. They all wanted to pet them. Play with the puppy.
Yes, they did.
So have you trained them how to shake hands yet? We get to go
Not
around
yet.
and shake their hand and welcome them.
Not yet. So, you guys are all welcome to stop by the station anytime. So, or you can request him. Both of them can be requested to go, but he is farther ahead than Nitro is at this point. So we're 18 months away before they're fully trained yet. So, but we're in the process.
All right.
Thank you guys for approving this, by the way. So.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Creation of ad hoc committee for the Southside Beautification Project. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item for those in attendance and those watching at home. I'd like to direct your attention to the big board. And what we have tonight is appointment of an ad hoc committee for the Southside Beautification Project. A little bit of background on the beautification project. If we were to orientate everyone here, Oskaloosa Street is right up to the north. The Pella Corporation corporate headquarters and factory corporate campus is located right over here. And then also our Clark Street substation is located right over here for the electric utility. What we're talking about this evening would be appointment of the ad hoc committee, and I won't go through each of the names that you see up on the big board, but just to highlight just a few. Councilmember Lynn Branderhorst will actually be the city council representative on the committee as well. And we do have one member that's yet to be determined, and that's from Pella Corporation. That will be a facilities team member that they will be appointing to the committee as well. So with that, it's also important to note the Community Services Director will be staffing the committee, providing administrative support to the committee as well. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the staff presentation. Be more than happy to answer any questions on this appointment.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Spore.
Hopkins, Spore. Any discussion?
It's an exciting project. It's been a vision for the community since 2018, and I'm very excited to have this committee and to make forward progress.
Anything else? All right, all in favor of the motion for approval, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. This time we have an opportunity for a public forum, so anyone wishing to address council regarding any agenda item, step forward to the microphone. Please state your name and address and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Can I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Young, Spore, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes. Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6579, entitled Resolution Approving Reserve Capacity Agreement with Missouri Basin Municipal Power Agency, DBA Missouri River Energy Services. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, once again, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the big board for the presentation on this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, what this resolution would do is approve our new reserve capacity agreement with Missouri River Energy Services. It's important to note the agreement, if the council were to approve this resolution, would become effective on June 1st of this year and would extend until May 31st, 2052. Now, one of the key items that's included when we talk about the reserve capacity out of the city's diesel generating plant is currently the city receives $834,000 a year in selling the capacity out of the plant to Missouri River Energy Services. Under the new RCA that we're considering this evening, that amount is projected to increase to $1,512,000. So it's a significant increase financially for the city of Pella. Also important to note is along the financial terms of the agreement, starting on June 1st, 2024, there may be escalations in the rate as well, up to 4%, depending on market conditions as well. So finally, Mr. Mayor, it is important to note this agreement has been reviewed by city staff as well as our legal counsel, and we are recommending approval of the agreement this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Vanderhorst, Hopkins. Discussion or questions?
I just had 2 questions. Is it normal to have on these type of agreements go this long?
Yeah, the rule of thumb is we've had a capacity agreement with Missouri River since right around 2012 when we joined Missouri River. And what they told us when we got into the agreement is that Missouri River would always renew the agreement before the expiration on it. And so if you're to look at the term of the agreement, the 29 years that they're doing with all their members, please keep in mind that, Nate, I believe our power supply agreement with Missouri River runs through the year 2057. I believe that is correct. So it's not quite as long as the power supply agreement, but it's roughly that same time period. It is also important to note that I would not be surprised if the agreement's renewed sometime before 2052. In fact, that's been the track history. About every 5 to 10 years, the RCA agreement's been renewed.
Okay. And then the other question I had when we proposed our budget, did we use the old number in the budget for this upcoming year or the new number?
We use the new number.
Okay.
So maybe Nate, it says depending upon the annual rating certification, the unit availability. Can you explain that?
Okay, so the rating certification is just an annual run of the entire generating plant that Missouri River calls on for us to run every unit in there at full capacity. They pay for all the fuel and expenses that come out of that, and it just gives us this the rating of everything. So as these things age, they may start derating a little bit, or if you start using next fuels or biofuels and things like that, the kilowatt hour output may change on those.
And the unit availability, just
well, it's marketed as one single unit, but availability, if something goes out of service for a time like Unit 7 is currently, that payment goes down by that 1/14 of the unit.
okay.
Any idea what the remaining useful life is of those diesel generators?
As long as we keep them maintained, they last through the end of this term.
May.
We hope hope so. We had the failure on Unit 7, and they didn't make the part anymore, but the original manufacturer was willing to remake the generator requirement, which consequently was installed today. We're going to run it tomorrow.
Anything else? All right, then we will vote on the motion for approval. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Spore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
DeAnstruck,
Yes.
Carlstone.
This
Motion passed. Moving on to resolution number 6580, entitled Resolution Approving Preliminary Plat for Triangle Property Subdivision. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, we're entertaining a preliminary plat for the Triangle property subdivision that's located at 2610 Washington Street. I believe this particular subdivision is being proposed by Artisan LLC on this. It is important to note as we consider the two plats this evening that both the preliminary plat is generally the overall game plan we have for new subdivisions and includes public infrastructure, while in comparison the final plat is used for land transferal purposes and recording purposes at Marion County. The preliminary plat that we have this evening is described on the big board, and just to orientate everyone here, the Old Dutch Fix is located right here, Washington Street is located over here. I believe the Mill Farm housing, rental housing complex is located up over here. And if you were to go over just over here, we have Chick-fil-A as well as Smash Park on there. But again, we're looking at roughly a 2.5 acre parcel, and it's this yellow highlighted triangle piece that we're talking about this evening. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Once again, we have the preliminary plat showing up on the big board. Please, let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the what we're charged with under the city code is that the city council will review the preliminary plat for conformance with the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, as well as the subdivision ordinance. And as far as our findings, we believe that the plat that's being proposed this evening is in compliance with both city code requirements, the zoning code requirements, as well as the city subdivision, and is also consistent subdivision ordinance, and is also consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And as a result, Mr. Mayor, we are recommending approval this evening. It is important to note that the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this preliminary plat at the February 27th meeting, and it was unanimously approved.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved. Support.
Hopkins, Manster, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins,
Yes.
DeAnstruck,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Spore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6581, entitled Resolution of Pella City Council Approving Final Plat of Triangle Property Subdivision. Is there anything to add here?
For the final plat?
Yeah.
Looks a lot like the preliminary plat, so I'll spare you through this, but this is just used for land recording purposes. Down in Marion County, it's simply the difference between this and the preliminary plat, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
Support.
Hopkins, Spore, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Spore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Reindeerhorst,
Yes.
DeAnstruck,
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving along to abstract of bills, number 2126. Can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve and issue warrants.
Support. Randerhorst, DeYoung. Any discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
DeAnstruck,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. Council, have any other business you would like to have addressed this evening? Any members of the public have any other business that you would like to address council with this evening? If so, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Karma Ruthven, 300 West 5th Street, Pella. I have a question on Washington Street, across from the fountain to the Sculty Gardens. There's no crosswalk there. We used to have one there, or should there be one there? I know we got the 2 stoplights, but people tend to want to go from the fountain across the street. And of course, I know with tulip time and stuff, you have more traffic. But I've been noticing, that, and I usually stop to let people go by, but I didn't know if that's something that has looked at or thought about, or I was just drawing your attention to it. Okay.
Danny,
Thanks.
you want to give us a little history? I'm sure you
Yeah, I
know.
can answer that. When we reconstructed the intersection of Broadway and Washington there, it went far enough that it was unreviewed and you cannot meet ADA requirements at that mid-block. If you look at the fountain and the sidewalk, there's about 2.5, 3 feet of difference. In ADA, you have to be 1 in 12. So if you picture that, to make it ADA, it's got to be a zigzag back and forth. So it's a $20,000 or $30-some thousand zigzag to make that happen. So at this point, we're not recommending it there. We've had trouble with other mid-block crossings. So that's why it's no longer there.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, then we're going to move to our policy and planning. First item on the list is ambulance service outside of the city limits. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As Mayor Ward stated, what we're here to discuss this evening is a financial offer that we've received for ambulance service from the city of Lighton, as well as the Lake Prairie Township, Summit Township, Black Oak Township, and the Ridge Township. Now, as far as the entities, and when you're wondering or not wondering, just for discussion purposes this evening, the map that we have listed up here is the service territory for the Pella Community Ambulance as well. Incidentally, this is also the same area that we perform dispatch services for as the City of Pella. And so just to orientate everyone, over to the east, we extend over to the City of Lighton. To the west, we're clear out to Highway 14. To the north, we're right at the Marion County, Jasper County boundary. And to the south, Chief, you guys go all the way to 92? Almost to 92 on it as well. So it's a rather large geographical area that we serve outside of the corporate limits. And just for those that may be viewing at home, the city's corporate limits are located right here. So if you can see from a service territory, we extend quite a ways out past the corporate limits and have traditionally in the past when Pella Community Ambulance was a nonprofit agency. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, as far as the entities that we're serving and continue to serve through the first 9 months of the year, we've had some preliminary financial results, and we've extrapolated those costs out for a full year. So some of the items that we're talking about tonight is estimated total cost that we have. And the reason we've broken these entities down into both Marion County and Mahaska County, and Mandy, if we can go back to the map again, please. It's important to note that this geographical service area, for a number of years, they've been serviced by the Lake Prairie Township and the Pella Ambulance. And it's worked really well for the entities. They've banded together and provided, and is in partnership, I'm sure it's worked out very well. When we look at it from the city standpoint, and when we start talking about things such as essential services taxes that we're going to be talking about this evening, anytime you get into tax situations and voter referendums, those are strictly almost run by the individual counties. So that's important to keep in mind as we entertain the financial offer tonight, and we look forward on a go-forward basis, hopefully to working out a long-term solution for ambulance services that we're dealing with both Marion County as well as Mahaska County. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, this information was in the packet, so we won't spend a lot of time with it, but it is important to note that for this area, we're estimating that we're going to have nearly 300 service calls this year to this area. Total estimated cost is somewhere over $205,000. As far as the subsidy, and when we look at subsidy, that means is we have a total cost of about $205,000. We have roughly right around $63,000 we're estimating for patient revenues on that is what we believe we're going to recover. We believe that the subsidy that's going to be required to provide ambulance service to this area is right around $133,000 for the current year. So that's a key number to keep in mind as we discuss financial terms from the entities and what they're proposing this evening. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the offer from the townships in the city of Lighton, the entities are offering to pay $36,000 per year for ambulance service. And under the term, they'd like to have a 3-year agreement from the city of Pella that would begin, actually they backdated it, so it would start on July 1st, 2022. So it's for the current fiscal year. and it would extend out to fiscal year 2025, which would expire on June 30th, 2025. Now, the representatives that we've been discussing this with and trying to work towards a long-term solution on this item have also stated that they plan to pursue an essential services tax, and we're going to explain or try to give a better explanation of the essential services tax as well. Now, a couple key points to keep in mind before we get into the essential services tax discussion. If council were to approve this offer, staff believes the entities would be levying about 9 cents per $1,000 of taxable valuations for ambulance services. It is important to know we're coming off the heels of the city budget and the operating subsidy for the Pella Community Ambulance. If you work that out as far as the tax levy for the citizens of Pella, we're at $1.10 is what we're levying in the city's pad. Total tax rate is $10.20. A little over 10% of that is ambulance service as well. So that's an important point to keep in mind. Equally important when we look at it, and from the representatives of the townships on this, and we just have Lake Prairie and Summit is what we were able to pull the budget forms for on this. But they are projecting a cash balance of $354,000 at June 30th, 2024. And what the representatives of these entities have told us is that this is reserved, we believe, for future fire equipment purchases. The staff has not reviewed any schedules on capital improvements on that as well. And we'll talk a little bit later on about what the city levies for property taxes on that. But again, when we talk about the cash balances, it was at $354 for both Lake Prairie and the Summit Townships is what they're estimating on their official budget forms at June 30th, 2024. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, what we have listed up on the big board is the taxable valuations for each of the entities that we're serving up here, these entities outside the city of Pella. We believe they total just under $371 million for taxable valuations. And from city staff standpoint, and I want to state for the record, and on this, not only from staff standpoint, I believe I'm speaking for Councilmember Banstra as well as Chief Higginbotham on it. We've been looking to try to find a solution and a means to continue to provide service for the areas out together. We also believe it's important that we work together to try to find a long-term solution for this as well. What we have and what the townships have stated is they feel comfortable with contributing $36,000 per year to the city of Pella. Council's going to have to be the judge whether that's adequate or not, particularly when you look at the subsidies involved or what we believe is going to be involved in serving the townships. From city staff standpoint, we feel, and we're going to get into what staff's analysis and staff's recommendation is regardless of what the financial contribution is over here, whether it's a 2-year agreement or a 3-year agreement, we believe we also need to be working towards a long-term solution. And we believe the long-term solution is an essential services tax that the townships could adequately fund the ambulance on this. So the offer from the townships, we don't know a lot about it, but the $36,000 is what they feel comfortable based off staff's analysis, off their taxable valuations and their cash balances. I guess I'll speak for myself, so I don't drag anyone else in this. I feel they can be contributing more, but that's going to be council's decision on the matters. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Before we get to staff's recommendation on the matter, let's talk a little bit about the essential services tax up here because it has some, I'd say, fairly unique items in there for it actually to go into effect. If you recall, we stated that this group that we're working with, and they've worked very successfully for years on their partnership, but it actually consists of 2 different counties. So when we talk about long-term funding of the ambulance and the $133,000 projected deficit that we have this year, you're actually talking about a tax that would be collected in both Mahaska County and Marion County. And that's very important to keep in mind as we continue to work with the townships on this item. Now, it's staff's understanding for it to even be to go into effect that they're going to have a petition, and they're going to have to form a proposed district. They're going to have a petition from 25% of the property owners who also comprise 25% of the total valuations within their areas. And so with that, once the petition is submitted to the county supervisors, the respective county supervisors are also going to have to declare EMS an essential service as well. So we'll take approval of the Board of Supervisors. That's why we believe that any tax, essential services tax for this area, there's actually going to be at least 2 votes, one in Marion County and one in Mahaska County. Now, as far as the rural tax is concerned, is if it was approved by the voters, they could levy up to 75 cents per thousand to support the ambulance services on it. So 75 cents is the maximum amount. They don't have to go up to 75 cents. They could use something less than that. But that's where, when you start talking about property taxes and rural citizens paying property taxes for the ambulance, that's an item that this group is going to have to communicate to the citizens of both rural Marion and Mahaska County as well. If they went up to the full levy amount, it'd be about $275,000 that they could levy to support the city's ambulance service. Now finally, and probably the most significant item of this, is any tax would have to be approved by the voters in both Marion and Mahaska County. That would require 60% of the voters within the proposed district. So when you look at, and you start talking about the essential services tax, from the standpoint, a staff standpoint, it could take a while to actually adopt an essential services tax when you look at the petition requirements, as well as getting approval of supervisors, and then ultimately the approval of the voters of the respective districts as well. That 60% is a fairly high threshold. And before we go on, is there any questions about the essential services tax for rural entities? For comparison purposes, I would like to mention that these requirements that would require for the rural townships to levy separately for an essential services tax, basically the same requirements for the city of Pella. If we wanted to levy separately for the EMS, we could actually levy up to $1. If you recall, we said this last budget, we were actually at $1.10. We could actually have our citizens vote on an essential services tax too. Could be up to $1. But our requirements would be the same. We'd have to have 25% of the property owners that represent 25% of the total valuations within the city of Pella, and that could be a relatively high hurdle for us as well, in case you're wondering.
So the city, within the city limits of Pella, would not participate in this?
No.
Yeah, this would just be outside in the rural areas.
That's our understanding, and I'm going to preface this. This is something that's fairly new for the rural townships. I believe in Iowa there's 3 cities that have an essential services tax, so they're relatively small towns on it. So we don't believe that there would be a vote that it would be the citizens of Pella. If that vote were to occur, we would actually have a separate petition from the city of Pella, same requirements, and instead of the county board of supervisors, it'd be the city council that would have to approve the petition as well.
Just adding once to that too, Mike, Lighton would have to go through the same process we would. That wouldn't be included in the township.
Yeah,
So.
that's another complication with the group. And again, I think from, based on my observation, is they seem to have done a good job managing public services for a number of years. But when you start talking about the essential services tax, it means different things for different parties on it. And I think we're much more familiar with the efforts that have been happening in Marion County. Can't say that I'm aware of the efforts that's been occurring in Mahaska County, but the city of Lighton, it's our understanding, would be very similar to the city of Pella, as they'd be separate from any vote in Mahaska County. Okay, well, let's go ahead, Mandy. Now, as far as our recommendation this evening, from staff's recommendation, we believe it's in the best interest of all parties to work together to provide ambulance services for the townships in the city of Lighton. That's ultimately the goal. And we also believe that any ambulance service subsidies that are performed by the city of Pella should be on a temporary basis, and it should be just until the citizens of the unincorporated areas, as well as the city of Lighton, are able to decide to make a decision on a new essential services tax to fund the ambulance services. Now, as far as our recommendation, the townships are proposing a 3-year financial proposal, and from city staff standpoint, we're actually recommending a 2-year ambulance service proposal. And the reason for this, there's a couple different reasons on here. So our proposal would be through June 30th, 2024. And what we would propose is, you got to jump down to D up there on the big board, is that we accept the township's proposal for $36,000 for this current fiscal year. We notified him a quarter of the way through the year about the financial contribution. We think that's reasonable under the circumstances is to work with them for $36,000 for the current year. For FY24, when you look at the $133,000 projected deficit for FY24, What we would recommend is that we split the difference between them, or split that subsidy, so half of it would be paid by the City of Pella, and half of it would be paid by the townships in the City of Lighton on this. Now, any agreement that we would have would be conditional upon the townships and the City of Lighton working on the adoption of the essential services tax. The reason why we stated that 2024, we think it makes sense on that is, as we go through 2024, if you recall, and Chief, I'm probably a little off on the terminology from the state of Iowa, but this is actually our base year that we're establishing for the GMET grant from the state of Iowa, and that's a reimbursement for Medicaid patients, is my understanding, correct?
We have to be a year in existence, and then we have to do a base year, so next year will be our base year, yes.
Next year is, okay, I get a little confused on that, so, okay. The key thing is in 2025, we're gonna be eligible for the grant. And so theoretically, our costs should be somewhat lower in FY25, hopefully, on that. And we think at that time, you know, if we have lower costs, you know, it makes sense to kind of stop at 2024 before we become eligible for the grant. The other thing is if you look at all the requirements on this essential services tax, and from city staff standpoint, we want to be supportive of the townships and the City of Lighton on getting that adopted and help in any way we can. However, when you look at all the parties involved, the two different counties, the two different boards of supervisors on it, it's going to take a lot of coordination to get a tax passed in both counties, we believe, on that. And so we want to make sure before we sign up for 3 years on it that A, it does take staffing, it does take manpower, additional manpower to serve this area. We want to make sure that there is progress being made on the essential services tax on it as well. So we think that the logical step is to break it off in 2024 and reevaluate throughout this next year. But I want to reemphasize to council from city staff standpoint, we want to continue to provide service to the townships and the City of Lighton. We want to work together. We just think any offer that the city makes in doing it ought to be towards the end goal, which is actually presenting the essential services tax to the citizens of these rural, both the townships in both Marion and Mahaska County as well. So from our standpoint, again, the key thing on the 2-year proposal will accept their current offer for $36,000 for the current year, split the difference on the projected operating subsidy for FY24, and continue to evaluate this agreement throughout next year. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I think that is our presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions the council may have on this item. And before I do that, Councilmember Bansford, do you have anything to add since you've been kind of
what I thought would be appropriate if, and I've asked Terry Van Coten to come and give us a little bit of overview what her role has been within in Marion County and the meetings that we've been having, and then she can maybe open it up for a couple questions from us too at the end before we start discussing. Please, if you would.
Good evening. I'm Terry Van Coten. I work at Marion County Public Health. I work as an EMS coordinator. I worked in EMS for over 20 plus years as an EMT. I was a volunteer. I was a medic. I was a paramedic.
Can you hang?
Sorry.
Are you picking her up at all? Okay.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
And as a critical care.
Kind of talk to the mic. So we get it on the.
Is that
there
better?
There you go.
Okay. Usually no one complains about all of it. But anyway, so I have a lot of experience in EMS, and as an EMS coordinator, I also work as a medical examiner investigator within Marion County and some other counties around there. So I have a lot of experience dealing with EMS, law enforcement, fire departments and stuff. So part of my role is within the state of Iowa, understanding the structure of EMS and educating our communities about EMS and how EMS functions is a huge piece of this. So I'm going to just explain this a little bit. EMS at the federal level falls under the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. And then it comes down to the local states and communities. And so in the state of Iowa, EMS falls under the Iowa Department of Public Health, Department of Emergency Trauma Services, and that's where I work, is through that. And it's done through a grant process. So currently in Iowa, I'm going to show you guys this map. you can see the different colors of this map. And the state of Iowa has broken our state up into 8 different regions. So the region that Marion County serves is called 1C. It's 11 counties, and we're the fiscal agent for all 11 of those counties. So part of my role as an EMS coordinator is to work through something called the Iowa EMS System Standards, which starts to lay the groundwork for EMS becoming an essential service in the individual counties. So system standards in the state was actually started back in like 2006 when they began to work on this, simply because they saw the loss of volunteers, the busyness of the EMS services, and the ability for some of the small rural counties to manage their EMS ambulance services and to make sure that there was ambulances available when 911 is called. Because what most people don't understand is we have a fire tax, and there's funding for that, but there's no tax or funding for EMS. It's not required. Townships aren't required to have it, and even communities are not required to fund an ambulance. And so as they began looking at it, that's where they created the system standards. It took a long process. And so what the development of this is for each individual county or EMS system. And when they say EMS system, it can go beyond the county borders, needs to look at itself and make sure that it's meeting the needs of its community and its citizens. So it doesn't want to look at each individual EMS service. It wants to look at how the EMS system as a whole functions within the county or within that system that fulfills most of that county. So there are several components of it, and one of the big pieces of it is just that the EMS services come together and make sure they are meeting the needs of the citizens of the community. So they look at response times, they look at protocols and the different levels of response that they have, and they staff and try to make sure that they're covering it. So if someone lives in a very southern area of Marion County and someone responds to them, if they have just a basic EMT ambulance service and they need a paramedic, they know they can call this service or that service and get a paramedic to tier with them, or a helicopter if it's available or whatever. So it's a matter of all those EMS services working together within the county to make sure everybody is being taken care of. The EMS services in Marion County have been meeting for over 2 years, and they have come together because when they came together, my history of working with EMS, I knew we had 8 different departments within our county. We had 8 very different departments with different viewpoints, medical directors, protocols, all those things. Part of system standards is for them to come together and look at working together, making sure that some of those small volunteer rural departments that don't have the time and energy to manage a training program or to manage a roster and some things like that, affiliate or work with another program near them or with their EMS system. So our Marion County EMS folks did a phenomenal job of coming together, and they've narrowed down the EMS medical directors from 8 down to I think 3 now, correct? 3. And they've also developed over the last 2 years a set of protocols that every single EMT, medic, paramedic, critical care medic work together under. So they're all on the same page when it comes to how they will treat and manage and take care of a patient. Another piece of the system standards is looking at funding. And so when the legislation came through for EMS to be essential, part of the piece of that is in order to go to that, they need to put together an EMS advisory board that they work with to make sure that their city and their local governments, including their board of supervisors, are aware and understand how EMS functions in their county. Because most governing agencies don't understand EMS. EMS is messy. It's got a lot of different moving parts and components to it, and even the public education piece of helping people understand, you pay a fire tax, but when you call 911, you are not guaranteed an ambulance unless your community or your county supports it. and most of our local public do not understand that. So these guys have been working towards this, like I said, for almost 2 years, and they put together an advisory board, which Mr. Banstra sits on with. We have representation from the different townships throughout the county, and we have representation from all the different local community governments within our county. And what they're looking at is, should we, can we, will we make EMS as an essential service within Marion County? So the role of the EMS folks at these meetings is to present the advisory board that Calvin and the others sit on with information of, this is what our system looks like right now, this is how we're functioning, what can we do to improve it, make it better, and they will help advise what direction, look at all these different options with it. So when you mentioned some of the counties that have already become essential, so we have some contractors all around the state that I work with through another grant, but they are tracking that right now. So we have about 8 different counties who have recently passed EMS Essential, so we're gathering that information from them to look at what the structure of it looks like within their county. We have several that are looking at doing the same thing, going through the same process that Marion County is going through, and we're talking with them, getting information from them to see how their structure is going to be set up, how they're going to use it, because you got to figure out how that funding is going to come down through the board of supervisors and how it's going to go out, and do you maintain the same system that you have and split that money, or do you look at a whole different system or a whole different approach to it? So in some of the counties that have employed this and have a system standards, they have different processes. What I've told the EMS services, most importantly, is we don't want them to lose their identity within their communities. That is very important and vital to their communities, to have those people there, to have those volunteers there. But you can still have a county configuration within that. That's potential. Some counties have gone to an all-county EMS service that's governed by their board of supervisors. They have an EMS coordinator appointed at the county level, and the funding runs through that. And it's kind of a reimbursement process for calls. Some have a base EMS system, which is usually like a paramedic or critical care level paramedic system, maybe out of their county hospital or their local hospital. But then they have satellite bases throughout their county, so that way, no matter where the 911 call comes in from, they have people to immediately respond, and it's guaranteed you're going to get a response. Because in some of our communities where you have volunteers, the page may go off, well, I only have one person, I have a volunteer driver, I don't have an EMT, call this county or this community to start coming in their ambulance going that way. That's a delay in patient care. And if it's a life-threatening thing, then we need to address that and make sure every citizen in our county or within our EMS system gets the same type of care or the same kind of response, no matter who they are, when they call 911. They want an ambulance to show up, and that's what we want. This is about life safety. This is about taking care of citizens in our communities and our communities around us. So there's lots of different ways this could be set up and stuff, and that's part of what the advisory board that Calvin is on is starting to look at. And there's only been 2 meetings, right, with the advisory, so we're just getting rolling on that. So they're going to start breaking it down and looking at operations, look at how all the different EMS services work within our county, look at how other EMS services are structuring this in their counties as a result of becoming essential. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and I really think we've talked about this before. I think Marion County could really showcase a very positive rollout of this, and they already have with the working relationships of all the EMS folks coming together. The one thing that I did say to Mr. Banstra is, with all this discussion of this here within the City of Pella and stuff, I said, I want everybody to have patience and caution, because I think there's a lot of good things coming. not only with the EMS as essential, but at the higher level, the state level, they're working on increasing reimbursements, and that's looking much more positive, that there's going to be an opportunity for those reimbursements to be improved. The other piece is they're looking at potentially EMS essential statewide. There's some states that have already done it and just done it statewide rather than county by county. The state of Iowa went county by county because it was the easiest way to get it through when it finally went through a year and a half ago or whatever. But the biggest piece of this is any change to the current structure of how Pella Ambulance runs now has a huge ripple effect on so many things. It's really hard to explain. But basically, you're looking at dispatch centers. So when 911 calls come in, you're looking at affecting Mahaska County, Jasper County, Marion County, Pella PD. So there's a process of changing all of that. You're also looking at all the, I don't know, how many MOUs or 28E agreements do you have, Greg?
Ton.
Huh?
I don't know how many, there's a lot.
A lot, right. So every time there's a change, then every single EMS service and stuff has to go back through all those MOUs and all those 28 agreements they have with every township, with.
But just a little sidebar on that. We don't officially have any 28E agreements because we became a City of Pella. We've been honoring the other 28E agreements, but we don't currently have any official 28E agreements.
Yeah. So there's that. So most of the time you have to go back and you have to realign those 28E agreements and those MOUs and stuff. And usually that's done through this process. The other thing to think about is EMS responds with the fire department. So if there's a change to that, then you have to look at when the fire department goes out into their area, which goes beyond and stuff, who's going to do their support and their rehab? Who do you send out for that, depending on where you go? And how do you break that down and decide that? It's just, it seems like a small change, but it has a huge ripple effect over multiple counties. So that's why I said to Calvin, I really want to have, I know it's really hard, but have patience and see how things roll out, see how the advisory council that has been appointed by the Board of Supervisors comes up with things and through some of those discussions, and hopefully some really positive things that come down from the state as well. There's just so many components to it. I don't know, I could give you a lot more information, but it's kind of overwhelming. But if you have any questions and stuff, don't hesitate to ask. If I can provide future information for you guys, I'll be happy to. But yeah, the most important thing is that all of our citizens feel comfortable that when they pick up the phone and call 911, someone's going to show up.
So I have a question. I think you said the state passed a year and a half ago. Was that the ability for counties to levy the EMS tax?
Yeah.
But it's still up to the counties to do it.
It is still up to the counties to do it. They have tried to move forward with moving it as a state, overall state thing, but it hasn't happened yet. So there's a lot of different playing parts, but one thing that you have to understand, in the beginnings of EMS came as a result in the 1960s of all the car accidents. Because before that, people, when you had an emergency or something, the funeral home picked you up and then grabbed a doctor or nurse from the hospital, and if they couldn't take care of you there, then they took you to Des Moines in a hearse, basically, or an ambulance, whichever role it was playing that day. But as a result of all the car accidents and everything, that's how EMS started. And then where do you house it? You know what I mean? EMS became housed with fire departments simply because they were the ones responding to all the car accidents. And it used to be in the 1960s and 1970s, most of your 911 calls were not EMS. They were more fire or potentially accident related. There's been a dynamic shift in that because of technology and things like that. Rarely do we have the number of fires that there used to be. There's a lot more safety in our vehicles and things like that. So there's been a reverse from most of the 911 calls in the 60s being a fire or something like that. Now, almost 90 to 92% of all your 911 calls are EMS calls. Only 8 to 10% of all your 911 calls are truly fire calls. So there's been a dynamic shift, and that's what fights some of that legislation going through is some of that, some of the big career union fire departments. So.
Well, I'm glad you confirmed that, because I had heard that it had flipped to 9 to 1 ambulance calls compared to fire calls over the years.
Right.
And the levy is for fire service. Current levy is for fire service.
Right, yeah, so it's been a big change in structure and stuff. And so there has been changes in how fire and EMS work together. Some departments are going back to volunteer fire and then having their EMS separated out. Some are keeping them combined. But when you combine them and you have fewer staff and you have a fire and you have something, then you have less people responding. So you have to think about those components too.
So, Terry, just a couple questions. On that map that you showed statewide first, are Marion and Mahaska County in the same region?
Of course not. That would make too much sense.
That's what I was going to guess.
Oh, wait, we are. Okay, never mind. On this grant, we are. Sorry, I'm totally wrong. Yes, we are. We are in the same region. Yeah.
Well, something that's positive at least.
It's Marion, Mahaska all together, and everything south.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question that I had was in November of 22, there were 8 counties that actually took it to the voters, and some failed and some passed. Mike talked about the difficulty on the petition part of that. I don't remember in our preliminary conversations that the petitions were made in those votes, but maybe there were.
I think they had to have a petition from a certain number of citizens to get it on to vote.
But then, was that easy to get the petition signed? So
that was not a barrier for the counties that we've talked to so far.
Okay, because
So-
Mike indicated it might have been, but so far that hasn't been historically at least.
Yeah, the counties I have talked to, my partner Roseanne and I are working on this right now to bring to you guys at the next advisory meeting. But that so far, the five that we've talked to has not been a barrier, but we haven't talked to all of them yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And let me clarify my comments. For the petition, I think they're going to have quite a bit of items worked out. When you start talking about people signing the petition, for instance, it may be a good idea to identify what the ultimate tax levy that you're talking about when you go out to collect the petition. I think that's going to take some time from the organizations. I think it's also going to take time in our case because we're dealing with 2 different counties. And my impression is Marion County may be further along on the rural issue, rural EMS, than Mahaska County. Don't know for sure. But needless to say, we're not dealing with just Marion County. You're also dealing with Mahaska County as well. And we also have a small city, another city, and with the city of Whiten as well. So there's complications in our particular case that I think, and when I said difficulties, what I'm really saying is it may take longer than what we think as far as trying to get it in front of the voters. But we need to be prepared for that as well.
I will say Mahaska County and many of these counties, Marion County is kind of a different animal compared to all the other ones because our largest community in Marion County is Pella. And so Greg is required to respond at an urban response level, whereas every other entity with our county is required to respond as a rural level in their times and things like that because our population just in the local community is at 10,000. We have 2 different hospitals within our community, and neither one are county-based. So when the county-based hospitals and some of those, they, and I know for a fact, Mahaska County is not pursuing EMS Essential because of the county hospital and some of the support of the hospital for their EMS and the way they're structured. They've changed a few things with their fire department. Has some gentlemen being trained as EMTs so they can be a backup to the county level, the city fire department, things like that. They've done some adjustments like that, but they have not indicated that they're going to be pursuing this because they are county-based, county-funded, and county-supported this time. It may change in the future, but in our meetings with them and stuff, that was indicated to us by their EMS director. And we had a meeting with them one time a few months ago, and I just had another meeting with them about a month ago in Mahaska County at their hospital as well. So that's part of the piece that makes Marion County really unique, is to not have that county-level hospital support or county-level EMS. So many of them have that, and that becomes their base in the county as EMS, and then they run their satellites off of that. Not to say Marion County, you couldn't have 2 bases and satellites of it. I mean, there's tons of potential here. There's tons of opportunities. It's just a matter of working through the weeds and figuring it out.
Thank you. A lot of really good information. Not sure it helps us make this decision, but it's a lot of good information. I think we're smarter than we were before you started talking anyway.
Well, good. If I
Thank
can
you.
help you with anything else, or what else did you have, Calvin? I'm sorry.
No, that was it. That's it.
So the question before this group is, we have, I guess I wanted the $36,000 proposed, or the proposal from the townships, was that a 3-year deal or?
Yeah, it's a 3-year deal, and it would start this current fiscal year, and it would end on June 30th, 2025. So 3 years counting the current fiscal year.
So we have to decide if to instruct to accept that, or Mike is, or the staff is proposing $36,000 for this year and then split the difference in next fiscal year.
I definitely prefer Plan B because it's a work in progress. It's not just stuck for 3 years. Okay, after year 1, we look at this and maybe we can split it.
Right.
Maybe the state does something in the meantime. I definitely like keeping it flexible.
Yeah, I would say I like the 2-year better than the 3-year. And, Mike asked the question rhetorically, is the amount from the townships adequate? Well, the answer is no. But the question really is, who subsidizes that? Do we have the citizens of Pella subsidize it when Mike Vanderhart has a heart attack? Or do the citizens of Richland Township subsidize it? That's really the theoretical question until the state and the county get our ducks in a row with that.
So if we go with staff's recommendation, we have to understand that there needs to be some renegotiation with the townships.
It seems like we're gonna be in the middle of a lot of negotiation with the townships, just as this conversation goes on, though, at any rate.
We don't have any insurers on this panel. There's somebody in the audience. This is just for my information's sake. I know having a fire hydrant in your front yard lowers your, house's insurance costs, et cetera. Does there any benefit to response times, to assessed values, or life insurance rates? I don't know of anything, but is there a value to the county that's kind of unseen in there besides just the well-being?
I'm not aware of anything unless, I'm not aware of anything at all. So, I don't know, I can look into it for you.
Yeah, we're not aware of anything that would be a direct correlation to someone's life insurance policy or life insurance cost.
Well, I'm wondering about the assessments too, though. Is that in their calculations, or is it truly real estate?
Well, the assessments are based off the market value, or theoretically the market value on it is what they use for assessments on that, and I don't believe response times for ambulance factors into that. So, but we're not aware of anything that has any type of financial benefits.
I'm sure a human being is a human being.
Yeah, and let me stand corrected. Obviously, with our EMS service, I think we have a top-notch EMS service, and my hunch is by having that rapid response lessens medical costs potentially for patients on it. In addition to saving lives, it's just it's not something that you can put a direct correlation as far as insurance policies and rates. Would that be a statement, Chief?
I would say yes.
All right, so instruction back staff is to try to negotiate Plan B.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the proposed amendment to the volunteer firefighter compensation plan.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, once again, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the big board for compensation rates for our fire department. It is important to note that the council originally adopted the firefighter compensation plan in 2012. And basically, we do have a list of the increases that we have that formally documents the increases. And I'm going to preface my comments on the increases that we're talking about tonight. Our firefighters are largely volunteers on them, and the stipend that we are discussing tonight and pointing out as far as compensation rates does not fully compensate the firefighters for their time they spend volunteering for the City of Pella. So please keep that in mind as we look at these proposed cost increases for our fire department. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, overall, when we look at this, the total cost impact of the changes that we're proposing this evening is $9,200. And with the staff feels that the increases are justified and well worth it as well. And so our recommendation is for council to formally approve this plan with the $9,200. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes, or the $9,200 increase, excuse me. With that, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that the council may have on the proposed firefighter compensation.
I question whether a $5 bump is enough for per call out reimbursement. Where's the chief at? What do the guys think?
We're just asking what we think is feasible, and that sounded feasible. We're not here to make money.
But you do save the community a lot of money.
Appreciate that.
You do.
Well, I mean, this is okay, but I think that we should definitely do something more frequently than 2012 to 2023 moving forward. This is maybe a good start, but I think it's something should be analyzed on a regular basis.
So thumbs up.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next item, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, request for solid waste contract extension with Midwest Sanitation.
Yes, sir. Our current contract with Midwest Sanitation for solid waste collection in our community expires on July 31st of this year. And staff has been in negotiations with Midwest Sanitation for a one-year extension. I'm going to preface my comments. Midwest has been working on this for some time. Normally this process, the last two times anyway, I could state, both in 2015 as well as the recent contract renewal that we're currently coming off the heels on. Our finance director, Mr. Corjo, now handling it for the city. As council is aware, that position's been vacant since early November, and so it has not been at, I'd say, lack of attention to the matter. It's been more a manpower issue dealing with this, and so staff has been in negotiations on a one-year agreement. And what's being proposed this evening is a one-year extension to the existing contract. There is a 4.8% price increase involved with it. The annual cost of the city's garbage contract is roughly $513,000. The proposed increase would be just shy of $25,000 for the City of Pella. So Mandy, let's go ahead on the second slide, please. Now, as far as looking out, as far as the rates are concerned, we do not believe the proposed rate increase will trigger a rate increase for our citizens on that with the 1 year with it. And staff also believes that Midwest provides a quality service to the citizens of Pella. And probably the most pressing issue on it is if we turned around and were to rebid the service, if there was a change in service providers, that may take a while to incorporate that change. And under the current time period with the contract being up on July 31st of this year, that may not be a feasible, less than desirable option. Not that it couldn't be done, and we're prepared to do it if council wants to go ahead with rebidding the service. But our recommendation would be is to extend it for 1 year and then really dedicate some policy and planning sessions that we could talk about the services involved with the solid waste contract as well, and make sure we're all on the same page when we talk about rebidding the contract, and we've identified the service levels and the expectations of the council on that as well. So with that, Mr. Mayor, staff is recommending approval proceeding with the 1-year extension. But before presenting this for a formal vote, we wanted to make sure we presented this to council during the work session and answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
Okay.
I would just comment the service is outstanding.
It is. And I think that increase, you've been more than fair with us. Running a small business myself, I know our expenses have risen substantially, not just slightly under 5%. So thank you for going easy on us, I would say. Appreciate it, and thank you for the quality you do for our community. Thank you very much.
Yep, very reasonable. Okay, appreciate the service.
Mike, is there a reason why, or would there be a hindrance to, let's say, we could negotiate a contract extension that was longer than a year for that same amount? It'd be potentially beneficial for the city, potentially for Midwest.
Yeah. Well, for the same amount for 3 years, you have to have two parties that be willing to agree to that. And so I'll just leave it at that. The second item that we need to consider is with the 1-year extension, this isn't simply a staff recommendation, it's also legal counsel's has to review the extension as well. The last time the service was bid out was 2015. We extended, it was a 5-year contract, we extended it for 3 years, same terms. So it's, when you look at bidding out city services, you always sort of have to take that into consideration. What's the appropriate amount of time that it goes before it's rebid on it? And this is something that we did have the city attorney review for reasonableness on it as well. And so there's a couple of different things. You have to have a party agreeing to the cost parameters on it, as well as the service levels. And then in addition, you also have to take a look at city's policies as far as rebidding services. And so after considering those items, that's the reason for the 1-year extension.
What, is there general, what would trigger a rebid?
Well, under the city's policy, as far as the purchasing policy is concerned, we have a policy as far as rebidding out services on it. It's always up to the council to choose if they want to remain with the current contract, extend contract, but we try to follow city policies. So generally, when contracts are up for services, particularly contracts that are $500,000 a year, generally the service is rebid. In this particular case, we feel the service has been exceptional, and we also feel that if we're going to rebid the service, we'd like to have, we need to start it sooner than a couple months before the expiration of the contract on it. So we need additional time, and we're not blaming Midwest for that. It's been a manpower issue on our end for that.
Okay. Better bring it up for action.
Okay, thank you.
All right, last thing on our list is a request to name the Southside Beautification Project in honor of Charlie Farber. Charlie, are you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
We'll let Mike talk, and then if you want to tell us anything, we can hear you. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as Mayor DeWard stated, what we have in front of us is a request and actually a staff recommendation to name the Southside Beautification Project in honor of Mr. Charles S. Farber. Now, it is important to know a little bit of background on the project, and I failed to mention this earlier when we appointed our ad hoc committee. But in 2019, we actually hired a CDA to come up with a master plan of the 2.75 acre site. It's important to note that this is the former location of the city's power plant on it. And one of the items that we've had is we've worked very closely on this project in conjunction with the Oskaloosa Street redevelopment plan. And the thoughts are, is by beautifying this corridor, that really could serve as a cornerstone and key benchmark for the Oskaloosa Street corridor redevelopment plans as well. And Councilmember Lynn Branderhorst has been a part of this since day one, and she's much more elegant in explaining various details and elements involved in the master plan. But it's a very elaborate plan and something that's geared towards really beautifying the south side of Pella. As far as we're also hoping that it'll spur additional economic development on the south side as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mindy. Now, in this, as far as the recommendation by staff, staff believes Mr. Farber has had a tremendous impact on our community. We've listed out a lot of detail on the contributions of Mr. Farber to the City of Pella. In addition, it's important to note that Mr. Farber is also willing to donate his time to help design and finalize the plans for the park as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the city policy is concerned that we have for renaming city-owned policy, I'll just point out a couple of the items that we have. But as far as the criteria that we establish for renaming city assets in honor of individuals, we need to consider the individual or group's contributions to the community. We also need to consider the geographic location. And going back to the first item here, as far as the contributions to the community, there have been several. They've been significant for the community. And it's something that we're very appreciative of as well. So we believe that one definitely meets the criteria of the policy. We also believe with the geographic location that the park, the Southside Beautification Park, that's Pella Corporation's campus, and we think it makes, we think that that's a key component of the policy that's been met as well. And in addition, and based on the city staff's recommended review, we believe that naming the park at Southside Beautification Project in honor of Mr. Farber is in line with the city policy, and as a result, Mr. Mayor, our recommendation is to approve the request to name the project after Mr. Farber. But with that, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any comments, council?
I think Charlie should help plant tulip bulbs every fall.
Is that part of the deal, Charlie?
No response.
Is he still on?
Looks like he just dropped off.
Oh, we lost him somewhere?
Scared him away.
All right, everybody's okay, issues? All right.
Will
All
this-
right, sounds good.
Will this be like on the plaque, or everybody just understands it's?
That's part of Lynn's job to figure that out. Figure out where to put the
Hey, we'll help
recognition.
you figure that. Under control.
Hi,
right,
Don, this is Charlie again. I'm sorry I got cut off there for
Oh,
back.
yeah, we can hear you now. We thought we lost you. Anything you wanna? Did you hear Mike's presentation?
I did, and I'm so grateful. I'm so honored by this. I think it's going to be a great asset for the community of Pella. It's going to be a great asset for Pella Corp. And but I am absolutely drawing the line at planting tulip bulbs.
Phony.
That's Mark the Young making that request. So next time.
I knew it was.
Next time.
I
you're in
knew it
town,
was.
you
Hi,
can
Mark.
All right. Well, I think council is all for this. So thanks for all your contributions, and the project will get moving forward now.
Fantastic, and I think you've put a great group together, and I'm excited to be a small part of that. As you know, Daryl Metzger has agreed to kind of join me, who was the brains and the design behind the Mollengrot. He loves the city of Pella as well, so I think we got a great team to move forward with.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Charlie.
Be well, Charlie.
All right. Before we adjourn, I just want to make sure everybody has a great tulip time. Be safe. Welcome all these wonderful guests we're going to have in our community over the next few days. It's a fantastic time for this community, and so let's all do our part to make sure they feel welcome when they come. So it should be a lot of fun. Hopefully the weather forecast changed like every 8 minutes. So the last one I saw looks like it's going to be nice. So I expect we'll have massive crowds for the next few days. So let's have some fun and be safe. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Support. Brander, Horst, DeYoung. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Branderhorst,
yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Enstrom,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Sport. Yes.
We are adjourned.